The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm so excited to be back in this chair and so excited that it's Wednesday. We've got an incredible show for you. We are live. This is it. It's happening. It's Wednesday morning, and you know I love Wednesday because on Wednesdays, most of the time in the summer, you know, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But today we have Dr. Grant Bichet here with us, and she's going to be answering your questions live in just a few minutes. So our Facebook Live is open and up, and you can be sending questions in there, and we have other ways for you to send in questions. In fact, I'm going to have Samantha show you some of the many different ways that you can interact with us, because we love for this show to be interactive. We love to hear from you. We love your thoughts, your questions, your concerns, and there's no time that we love it more than when we have an expert such as Dr. Grant Bichet here to answer your questions, and it's all free. I want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, lots of things to do, but you can be watching the live show. All you have to do is click on the little triangle that's on the computer screen. That will start either the live show or the most recently recorded live show. If you want to go back in time, you can do it right on that site. There's a little memo tab that's up in the upper left-hand corner, and that gives you access to the 100 most recent recorded shows. You can do that. But to the side of the computer screen is something we call the live feature. If you put your cursor in the box that says your question, all you have to do is type and hit enter. You do not have to come up with a login and a username and a password or a credit card or, 14 days of, there's nothing. Okay, it's totally free, totally interactive. You just type and hit enter. It shows up here on my screen, and in that way we can have something akin to an almost in real-time conversation. But you can also write in your questions on YouTube. We're live on YouTube, and you can write in your questions live on Facebook. The difference, because people are like, well, now why do you still have the live feature? Because it's anonymous. If you are writing in your question on YouTube, it will say your username, and if you do it on Facebook, it will say your name. And sometimes you want a little bit more anonymity, and so if you do, you can write in on our live feature. But also, if you have a longer question or something specific that you want to tell me in addition, but you don't want that part to be read, and it's got some finesse to it, right? You can always email me directly, s.penrod, P-E-N-R-O-D, at autism-live.com, and send your questions in, and we're always happy to get those to give to our experts. None better than our fabulous Dr. Doreen Grant Bichet that's starting in just a second. But I want to remind you that we have a second hour today too. That's Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Allspaw Jackson will be here. I know it's like hail, hail, the gang's all here today. And during today's show, we've got two fabulous guests. Jenny Palmietto is going to be with us to talk about Love and Autism, that amazing conference that happens every fall. Jenny's going to tell us what's on their agenda for this fall. And then we also have a guest who's going to be talking with us about Ann Lore, who's going to talk about the Ride for Autism, another wonderful benefit fundraiser that happens. It's coming up this Saturday, so she's going to be with us to talk about that as well. Plus, we've got in the news and a lot of really exciting things and a lot of catching up to do because I've been away and Nancy was away and Dr. Grant Bichet was away, and we'll be able to catch up, as it were. So, my friends, let's not waste any more time. It is time for Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dr. Doreen Grant Bichet is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grant Bichet.
Dr. Grant Bichet.
Dr. Doreen Grant Bichet.
Dr. Doreen Grant Bichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're really excited because I'm here and Dr. Doreen Grandpichet is here, and that
It's so
hasn't
good to
been
be
for
back.
like a month, the two of
That's
us
right,
together.
that's right. It was Nancy and I last week,
Yes.
and we definitely missed you, as always.
Well, and Jem and I got to watch some of it as we were having
that's sweet.
guacamole in San Antonio.
Nice,
We had you
nice.
guys on the table, and when the Wi-Fi was working, we were able to listen in, and
Sweet.
it was exciting and also nerve-wracking. It was like they're there, they're doing it without me. I kind of want to be there. I enjoy guacamole during Ask Dr. Doreen, but it's better to be here. So, and it looked like it was really fun and exciting. It always is, and I want to remind folks that if they have never seen you before, that you are an amazing expert in the
Thank
field
you
of
so much.
autism
That's
and
so
a
kind of you.
visionary and somebody who has been treating individuals with autism for more than 30 years at this point, and that you are an amazing individual. And
Thank you very much.
I'm always excited to be here, and I know that our viewers are too. We do want to remind everybody that there is no expert that can give individual specific advice
right.
in this format. That's not what the intention of this program is. The intention is for you to be able to write in your questions and have an expert give you information that can help you to go back to the experts that are closer to you and ask better questions and get better information. And
That's right.
you're wonderful at that.
Well,
so
thank you very much.
can I leap right in?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we had a question that came in. How do you deal with a high-functioning 17-year-old who gets angry and then becomes aggressive?
Right. And there's really no short answer to this, but we'll do our best here. The key to any kind of challenging behavior, as I've said many times on this show, is basically figuring out what is causing the behavior. It's not, when ABA first developed, we would have just had some various techniques to apply, but really, unless you know why the individual is getting angry and becoming aggressive, you could very easily make a mistake and do the wrong intervention. So it starts with, what's the function of the behavior? It always does. What is the function? So the question to ask is, what makes him angry? Let's assume he always becomes aggressive when he's angry, and then the question becomes, what makes him angry? And I've always said, most of our kids, in 99.9% of the cases, all of these aggressive types of behaviors are sort of a side effect of autism. It's because the individual can't communicate. And because they can't communicate, they become angry. In fact, it's true of us. If you think about it, Shannon, like if you have a frustrating conversation with someone and you feel like you cannot communicate with them because it's just not getting through, you get angry, right? And when you get angry, people do different types of things. Obviously, we don't get aggressive in most cases. Some people still do, but in most cases, you don't get aggressive physically. At least you might get verbally aggressive or something like that. But the question really becomes, the way to fix that is to make sure that that aggression doesn't work, but you are given a different way to communicate that does work. And so for this individual, I don't know what the things are. First thing you would have to do is a functional behavior assessment, and that's an FBA. And that asks a bunch of questions. If you could do an indirect FBA, the way to do that, you can go on skills, and there's a part called CIFA, which stands for Card Indirect Functional Assessment, CIFA. And it's just a series of questions about the behavior. It'll say, what are the types of things that get him angry and he aggresses? Like, what scenarios, what situations? And you answer those, and it helps you identify if the individual is trying to get access to a tangible object, if they're trying to gain attention, if they're trying to escape from a demand. What is the function of the behavior? And once you understand that, then that gives you links to this other thing called the BIP Builder, Behavior Intervention Plan. And that gives you all the possible ways that you can intervene. So if, for instance, an individual gets aggressive because you've asked them to do something, they don't want to do it, that is trying to escape a demand. And then the short answer is you must figure out a way to make them do it. But if you can't do that when they aggress, you don't let them out of the demand. That's really, really important. If the individual is aggressing and you back off, you know what they're learning is, oh, every time I want somebody to back off, I'm going to get aggressive. And that's just the reality of it. So, you know, all of these things are very easy to deal with, but, you know, having a 17-year-old, and your 17-year-old is high functioning. Again, people define that differently, so I don't know exactly what that means, but he should not have, it'll be easier dealing with an individual who's high functioning in some ways because he'll understand these rules. And in some ways, individuals who are high functioning are very smart and they can manipulate the situation a little bit more, so it might be harder in that sense. But please don't give up. Go to another very good resource for you in addition to, you know, the easiest thing is to do the CIFA and the BIP. Very easy, you can do that. But if you really have the time, and I really recommend that you educate yourself on the basics of ABA, go to IBT website, which is the Institute for Behavioral Training, which is ibehavioraltraining.com. On there, you can just go and get a module on challenging behaviors, and there's several that you can choose from, and they're very short, very inexpensive, $10 or so, and they will really, really help you understand all this stuff that I just said in a much more detailed and cohesive way.
And now that you've given that brilliant description, I just want to tell you what goes on in my head.
Sure.
Because I always try to come up with little songs to help me to remember stuff. And I don't know if everybody, you might be too young to remember, but there was a thing called Schoolhouse Rock, and then it had a resurgence. There was one the song that they would sing, Conjunction Junction, What's Your Function?
Yeah.
And I once we started ABA, I changed that in my head to, you know, function, what's the function?
Yeah.
To remember that every behavior had a function, because you get emotional.
Oh, of course.
When your kid is hitting you, and I certainly had my little kid hitting me. I didn't have a 17-year-old hitting me. But I had emotions about that. You bring things with you into the relationship, and I was not okay with being hit. And so he would start hitting, and a whole lot of things would happen in my mind so that I wasn't in any way prepared to deal with what was happening. When people described to me and said, okay, that is behavior that's happening, and it is communicating something, and it has a paycheck, that's whatever the paycheck is the function of it, that helped me to get like a little bit pulled away from the emotion of it. The guilt and the shame and the just all the uncomfortable that came with it. And for me, that was important. And we're not trained to think of behavior as function. But whenever I would see something that was weird, I would start singing the song, function, what's the function?
Absolutely.
Which helped me a lot. But so you can overcome these things.
Absolutely.
But you got to learn.
You have to, that's
what it is.
It's such an important point you make, Shannon, because when a behavior happens, it's not like we're just sitting and observing it and mentally calm and can be like, oh, I wonder what the function of this is. We get sucked into it and we're like, he's becoming aggressive. How do I handle this right away? And your adrenaline goes up, and you start not thinking straight, and all that.
And you start time leaping. You like start picturing catastrophic things happening, like them being in jail.
Oh yeah.
You being dead and your child being in jail.
Oh my
gosh. I can go there in 3 seconds when something happens, right? And then you are not prepared to do anything that's
reasonable
in any way.
Yeah, that, or even, you just can't think. You start behaving wrong as well.
Yeah.
And so being able, and it's not just, also it's very important for our viewers who, it's not just about aggression. We're talking about any kind of behavior. We're not talking about challenging. It doesn't have to be that severe of a behavior. It could just simply be something as simple as, let's say you have a teenager who complains all the time.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is. You look at that behavior and you wonder, what's my role? What should I be doing with this? And if you can identify the function, if you can figure out what it is this individual is trying to get across to you, what's the reason for this? If they could communicate better, how would they be vocalizing it? That's what I always ask. If they could talk, what would they say? And if you could figure that out, then what you do is you make it easier for them to gain access to whatever it is they're seeking by doing something appropriate rather than inappropriate.
And it's the keys to the kingdom. I always think about, for our 10th wedding anniversary, we went to Vegas. and we brought Jem. He goes on he's like, where are we going for our next anniversary? And we went to see Mystere, the Cirque du Soleil
So nice,
Mystere.
yeah.
And we were excited to be there, and they had told us come early. There's a pre-show. If you're available, come for the pre-show. They have a clown who comes out and does stuff. So there were probably 100 people in the audience for the pre-show, but there was a family that was in the next section down from us. They had to have paid a small fortune for their tickets,
Right.
because ours weren't cheap. And it was a mom and a dad who were not young mom and dad, and they
Right.
had an adult daughter who was in a wheelchair and who was nonverbal.
Right.
And 2 minutes into the pre-show, the daughter started making noises that were really uncomfortable for everybody to listen to. And they were trying to quiet her, and it wasn't working. And I could tell that they were so aware of all of our eyes on them. And then when that wasn't getting their attention, she began to strike out and try to hit them.
Yeah.
And I sat there, it was like watching a car accident in slow motion. I felt so bad for this family, but you don't want to interrupt, you don't want to intervene, you don't want to do anything. And Jem, of course, was starting to get agitated, and I was trying to distract him, and now the poor clown
Oh
who's
my
trying to
gosh.
deal with all this stuff, right? It's a car accident. Well, eventually they got so flustered that they said, okay, we're going to get up and leave. And the minute they stood up to leave, she was happy because she needed to go to the bathroom.
Oh my gosh.
And it was so evident to me that that's all she wanted, was to get up and go to the bathroom, but she didn't have the means of communicating it. And I know that they took her to the bathroom, but then they did not come back in because they didn't want a chance that she was going to have. And I just thought, oh, that missed thing of all she wanted was to go to the bathroom. And then they could have come back and very likely have watched the whole show. But I knew that those parents were in this moment. At that time, this was many years ago. This was 5 years ago. I didn't feel empowered. Now I would have gone up to them in the bathroom and said, please come back.
Yeah.
Please come back and watch the show.
That's very
We're
nice.
but I didn't. I didn't then, but I would
No,
now.
but I understand what you're saying. And the thing for me is, a lot of times, you can imagine how many times I want to intervene in the environment when I see things, but I don't. Because people are at different stages in their lives. Sometimes if it's very easy, I will, but a lot of times I feel bad. But having said that, this is why at CARD, for me, it has always been so important to do skill teaching in addition to behavior management, because you can easily, prevent a behavior, but unless the individual has the ability to communicate, it's just going to happen in some other form of behavior, because how else is she going to communicate? I really need to go right now. No one's getting it. I either have to wet myself or I have to tantrum. How else am I going to communicate? So this is the thing that is so important for me, for every child, every adult, that's why I always say I love working with adults, because it's so easy. All you do is teach them a means to communicate, whether it's a PECS program or some kind of iconic program, or even verbal that no one's tested. And as soon as they can communicate, they just immediately, a lot of behaviors subside, because all they were trying to do was say, hey, this is unfair. This is not right. Like, I need something.
And that it could have easily been rectified. But I know for those parents, their entire evening was wrecked.
I know.
And they didn't get to see this beautiful show.
I know.
She didn't get to see this beautiful show.
Yes.
And I still mourn it. It's 5 years later, and I'm mourning it for them because I get it. But in any case, we can educate ourselves about these things. You just gave us the crash course on it, but when you want more information, IBT, ibehavioraltraining.com, and of course, skillsforautism.com. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to be back with more of your questions for Dr. Grandpichet. You can still be writing them in on our Facebook or our YouTube Live or on our homepage, autism-live.com. Stick with us. Bye-bye.
Welcome to Smarty. This month, we're going to be making our own chore spin wheel. You'll notice when we make this fun activity, these icons are going to be popping up onto the screen. These correlate to specific skill sets that are in the Skills program. Skills is the ABA-based online tool that helps parents build their own teaching plan for children on the autism spectrum. If you are a Skills user, this will help you get the most out of this educational opportunity. Well, let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are a large bowl to trace, cardstock, scissors, a pencil, a ruler, a hole puncher, a metal brad, and any other arts and crafts materials you want to use to decorate your pinwheel with. So step 1, you're going to take your large bowl and place it on top of the cardstock and trace the circle. Step 2, you guessed it, you're going to take your scissors and you're going to cut along the line. Step 3, you're going to fold the circle into quarters. This is the best way to make sure all the triangles within it are symmetrical. Once you folded the paper, you're going to take your ruler and you're going to trace those lines so you can actually see them on the circle. Now here comes the fun part. Take your arts and crafts materials and you're going to decorate the chore spin wheel. I used some crayons to color in every other quadrant so you could see them pop and see the difference between the different chores. Place the different adaptive skills your child is working on in the different quadrants. Once you're done decorating the circle and labeling the different chores in each quadrant, then you're going to take your scrap paper that you had left over and you're going to cut an arrow out of it. Once the arrow has been cut, you're going to take your hole puncher and hole punch on the very edge of it. This will be your spinner. Then you're going to take your arrow and your circle and line them up and take your brad and place it through and secure it. And voila, you have your finished chore spin wheel. Well, I enjoyed making this activity with you and I hope to see you soon. Until next time, guys, craft on! To find more about skills and to access all of the lessons you saw in today's Smarty, visit skillsforautism.com and click on the parents icon. Skills, the online autism solution.
Being part of this community is really important to a mom with a son like Jackson, because it really does take a village, and you need so much support, you know, to help bring out all of the amazing qualities and skills and talents that our children have. So I'm just very grateful to everybody who was a part of this.
I think it helps with all sorts of that self-esteem, social skills. They seem to communicate a little bit with each other, and they had a lot of friends. The helpers were phenomenal, and I think the social skills for sure, because they worked together and they did a couple of group things across the floor, and they sang songs together, and yeah, for sure, I think it's a really huge deal. A great program.
What programs like this show is the person is in front of what we call today a disorder. I think what we're finding is that these sorts of brain challenges that make people unique can actually be gifts in ways we haven't discovered in the rest of society to bring them out. So when you see a program like this and you see the kids dancing, having fun, and making up jokes, making up the story. I was here when they did that. That was so amazing to watch, because they were all focused, they were all present, they were all laughing, they were all getting into the creation of this story. And that to me sort of broke the barrier to say, no, first we're dealing with people, and then we're dealing with the challenges.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Granpichet, and she's answering your questions in real time. I want to take a question that had come in last week but came in a little bit later, that's very specific about, do you have a spot in Plymouth, Massachusetts? And they're asking specifically, is your staff stable, good benefits, lots of input, etc. And I think when they say spot, I think they're literally asking, is there a spot for a child? I think a lot of times this sounds to me, and help me if I'm wrong here, but this sounds to me like a parent who's about to move from one ABA provider and wants to know that they have a place to jump to.
Yeah.
Because you do have offices in Plymouth, Woburn, that's close, is it not?
Yeah, it is close, and I don't know. We actually had a site in Plymouth. I know that we had to move the site because a few years ago we opened in Plymouth, and then we had to close that site and open up in Woburn. But then I heard that we got so many more families back in Plymouth that we ended up going back as well to Plymouth. So I'm not actually sure. We might have a physical location in Plymouth. And the best way to do this, I think, is to go on our website. It's like we're past 165 sites now. I just don't know all the cities. If you could go on our website, centerforautism.com, and go to locations, and it's pretty updated. So it'll list all the locations, and there's a phone number and there's an email for every site. Call that site and say, if not Plymouth, find the next city that's closer to you, and call them and say, I have a child, I'd like to come in, are you open? Most of our sites are still taking in patients. I can't really say, I don't allow waitlist anymore, Shannon, so it puts a ton of pressure on my staff, but we do our best to take every child in within 6 month period if we can. So contact the office and see what their status is. To answer your question, we're pretty stable. We always have, the problem with incoming staff or new therapists is that when they come in, we at CARD, I don't know what other agencies don't really do this, but we train them quite a bit before they get out there. Sometimes they make it through training, sometimes they don't. We lose some therapists in the first 90 days because they just don't pass training or they're just not good enough. And we can't hire fast enough. We are hiring roughly 60 or so people per week, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. And but we do lose about a quarter of these people, or maybe a third of these people in their first 90 days, and the rest in their first year, which I think those that we lose in the first year are the people that are thinking this job really isn't for me, because there's a lot of driving involved. There's a lot of, maybe some of our kids or adults are aggressive. It's not an easy job. So aside from that, yeah, we have 100% benefits. We have all kinds of benefits for our staff, including health insurance and everything else. And we have amazing supervision. We are pretty well known for our incredible supervision. We do provide all free continuing education to all our staff all the time for them to maintain their credentials. We are more or less we're incentivizing our staff very, very highly. They get pay raises if they become a board certified autism technician, or if they become a registered behavior technician. They also have the ability to study become an expert in like behavior management, or let's say visual programming or different types of programs, and then they will get additional pay for that as well. And so we do all kinds of stuff to keep our therapists motivated, and they have a career path here. They can start from a therapist position and go all the way up to supervisor, and we do support education and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, please do contact the office at Plymouth or any other office that's nearby. And
I have the list if we want to go over it. So Stoughton, there's Woburn, Worcester is providing services but doesn't have a center yet, and Yarmouth.
Okay, Yarmouth is the one, I guess that's going to be pretty close.
Okay, so those are the 4 places in Massachusetts right now.
Great, thank you.
Fabulous. Okay, and since you brought up the RBT, somebody wrote in and said, I'm from Bangladesh, and how can I get RBA training course online?
Well, we have the training course online, so you can go to the Institute for Behavior Training, ibehavioraltraining.com. ibehavioraltraining.com. If you just go there, they have an RBT course. But aside from the course, you're going to need supervision in order to become an RBT. And there's a whole package on the IBT website, and they can tell you more about that. And I believe they or we are still providing supervision online. So, but I don't know if all of the supervision can be done online, so you should probably read up on it on the IBT website.
There you go. We look forward to having another RBT in Bangladesh.
In Bangladesh. The other thing for you to consider if the RBT becomes difficult is to actually do the BCAT, the Board Certified Autism Technician. They're pretty equivalent here in the United States. We get funding for both, so equally. So any agency that gives us funding for RBT will also give us funding for BCAT. And that is maybe a little bit, the requirements for it might be a little bit easier, and it is completely focused on autism as opposed to just general ABA. It's a very autism-specific credential.
There you go. We had a question come in on Facebook. Ash writes in, why does my 3-year-old gain a skill and over time stop practicing that skill? Be it washing hands, peeing in the potty, drinking from a glass. He is so resistant in all chores.
Okay, that's a really good question. So the only thing I can think of to answer that is that there's probably 2 reasons that we stop doing things. One is that we don't continue to be reinforced by them. And you realize, of course, that when you first, okay, so let's say a child learns to wash their hands, and that behavior is reinforced by lots of people cheering, him getting a specific reward for it, or whatever the reinforcers are. They're reinforcers that are not really built into the activity itself. For us, the reinforcer for washing hands is the avoidance of germs. But for a child, you have to keep reminding them, wash your hands, because they don't have that reinforcer yet, and they can't conceive of how important it is to avoid germs. So it's a meaningless thing to them. So for the child, it's just a matter of saying, good job, look, you washed your hands, that's terrific. Now, if you get rid of that too fast, if you don't maintain that behavior well, in other words, if the child doesn't receive reinforcers, then it'll go away. Any behavior will extinguish eventually if you don't fade off your reinforcers gradually and make sure that there are still environmental reinforcers in place. So until the child understands the benefits of washing hands and starts to become intrinsically rewarded for washing hands, they're going to depend on your reinforcers. Now, you don't have to reinforce every single time. In fact, don't, because continuous reinforcement tends to extinguish faster. You know, if I reward you every single time and then I stop, you're going to stop doing the behavior right away. But if I reward you occasionally and you can't predict when I'm going to reward you, your behavior will continue. So you need to get to that schedule of reinforcement. That means you need to maintain, you need to reward, and then start doing it on a variable schedule so that your child can't predict when exactly. Sometimes reward on the 2nd turn, the 3rd, the 5th, just do a variable schedule.
We call it the slot machine because you don't know when it's going to hit the jackpot. You put the quarters in and you're going to get a reward at some point, but you don't know how big and you don't know when it's going to be. That's exactly right.
And that behavior, as we all know, never extinguishes. Because the person, we keep trying, right? We never know when the reward's coming.
Yeah.
So that's one reason that your child may be stopping these things. The other reason is someone's doing it for them. So you learn to wash your hands, but then someone else comes and starts doing all your chores for you, and you learn, hey, someone's going to do my chores, so I don't need to do them anymore.
Right. Man, I want that. I want somebody to come after me and do my chores. All right, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to be back with more of your questions for Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. Stick with us.
Potty training is different for every child. A child could come in with absolutely, no control over their bladder, and as long as that's not a medical issue, then we can certainly approach it behaviorally and give them the tools they need to be successful, just like any other skill that we would teach.
Well, we think he's learning to pee on the potty. No big successes yet and lots of accidents. Here is the laundry from today.
For some of our kids takes, just a couple days. And then for other kids, it can take months and months and months. And then when you're looking at complete independence, it can take years.
Hey, you have to go pee-pee?
There's a lot of different ways to tell if a child is ready. We look for a couple different things. Probably the most important is parents saying, I need this to happen, I'm ready. Second is, a child showing interest in the bathroom, and some of it is simply age. It's time to go ahead and work on this.
What are you doing? Pooping. You're pooping? You first start with teaching the child what they need to do on the toilet. The basic thing we want is for them to drink as much liquid as possible. It's inevitable that if you drink a bunch of liquid, you're gonna pee.
Help. No, I can't help you pee. Help. I can hold your hand, but I can't help you pee.
Ultimately, what we want is that, the child, as soon as they're put on the toilet, they urinate. So that's step one. Step two is usually working through the amount of time that they're off of the toilet and making sure that they're not having accidents during the time that they're off. So this is kind of the bladder control stage of things.
So the purpose of the potty log is just to see how long it takes them as soon as they sit on the potty for them to actually urinate, and the amount of time that he's able to hold his urine. And with the log, we're able to visually see how long it takes them each time, and if they have accidents or not. He's on a half-hour potty schedule, so if he doesn't go when we take him, then we have to take him in 10 more minutes. So every 10-minute intervals until he does go, and then we reset the clock, and it's 30 minutes again.
Okay, buddy. Okay, last chance to go pee-pees. Do we reset it for 10?
Oh, what does that mean? What does that mean, Jack? It's potty time. We can come play after. Hurry.
What we hope happens in this time is that the kids will learn how to initiate going to the bathroom on their own. This is oftentimes the hardest part of potty training, is because they get so used to somebody telling them when they need to go that they're not really recognizing the signs just in their own body of when they need to go.
Uh-oh, he wet himself.
Uh-oh. Big wet?
Was it a lot? We can reset to half an hour now.
The biggest thing for parents is not to give up. The other big tip, and I think pitfall that a lot of parents fall into, is putting their children back into pull-ups or diapers, especially if they're starting to have accidents. And this is probably the worst thing that you can do. They need to recognize that feeling of fullness in their bladder and take themselves to the bathroom, or tell an adult that they need to go to the bathroom.
What do you have to do? You have to put your pee-pee in the potty. Okay, give it a shot. See if you can put it in there.
There you go. You're doing it. Yay, Jack.
Big prayer for your pee-pee.
Big prayer for your pee-pee.
Woo!
Yay! Good job.
What a big boy!
High five, high five, high five, high five, high five, high five, high five.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We are here with Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet, and she's answering your questions in real time. This is a question that I really want to get to. Please help. I have spoiled my son his entire life. He's 10, and we just received the diagnosis of ASD level 1. He has many electronics that he feels he can use whenever he wants, and has terrible tantrums when we try to take them away, usually after a tantrum or limit them in any way. We made a routine for him to follow. It's mostly fun stuff, with just brush teeth, get on pajamas, and go to bed as the only must-dos. The rest is play and electronics, and he still refuses to follow it, even with rewards. We are permissive parents, and I think that has played a role in his defiant behavior. But how can we start to turn it around? He has a lot of issues with following directions at school as well. He basically just wants to play on his electronics and avoid anything he doesn't like. Is it possible to reverse his behaviors? I just want to say I'm really proud of this parent.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, what a wonderful thing to write in, and when you admit, okay, we might have done this in a way that set things up, it means you're really on the cusp of beginning to understand how powerful you are.
Yes.
And that, you know, I think this is the best possible place that you can be in to start turning things around.
Absolutely.
So we sit at your feet. Welcome to here.
Absolutely. It's amazing. Good for you. And on that note, so to answer your question, it's absolutely possible. There's no question. But because these behaviors have been ingrained for 10 years, it's not easy. So let's be very clear about that. The best way to do this, to make it easiest on you guys, all of you, your child and you, is for you to get really well trained. Because, and I will give you advice right now a little bit, but it's not going to be enough. Because every time I tell you to do something, he's going to do something else and you're going to give in, and it's going to delay things, it's going to prolong things and make it difficult. So let's make a deal. I will tell you right now how this works, but I need you to go on the Institute for Behavioral Training, which is ibehavioraltraining.com, and I need you to become a well-trained parent. So go on there, go into the parent section and start looking at those various modules and start heading through them, especially the challenging behavior stuff, because I need you to learn the techniques. The techniques are important. And here's why I'm telling you this. Because the first thing you have to do is you pick one of the behaviors, not every circumstance, just one, and you allow him to tantrum, okay? And that tantrum could go for 2 hours. And during that 2-hour time frame, I do not want you to reverse or give in or do anything that you normally would do. That's gonna be the hardest thing for you. Because believe me, 5 minutes of your child tantruming, and I'm sure you know this, feels already like 2 hours. So when it's really a tantrum that's going on for a couple of hours, you are in bad shape as a parent. And I want you to be very empowered, and I want you to be really strong throughout that experience, which is why I want you to be trained. So that's it. The first thing you do is you select one thing, and I would probably, anything basic, just one command that you know he's not going to do, he's going to tantrum, and just let the tantrum wear out. Just let it wear out. Once the tantrum has calmed down, it could take 2 hours, then go ahead and interact with the child and try to prompt him to ask for whatever the object was, whether it's a break or it's an object, it doesn't matter, and then you give him the object and you reinforce and you walk away. Do not have conversation about it. Do not talk about it when the tantrum is occurring or after. There's no conversation occurring here about what just happened. Do not try to teach him the lesson during this thing. This has nothing at all to do with the cognitive aspect. This is just behavioral. What you're doing is you are very clearly making it known to him that the tantrum is ineffective in this circumstance. That's all. That's all you're doing. And once he understands this tantrum is not working, he's going to want to know what will work to get the thing that he wanted. And that's where it comes in, and you give him the language. And the language is just, can I have this? Or can I take 5 more minutes? Or whatever it is that makes it fair. But do not give in to the tantrum. That's the number one most important thing you can do. And because it seems like it affects many aspects of his life, that's why I'm saying pick one behavior at a time. By the time you do the, let's say, 4th one, he will have known. You won't even have to do it anymore. But the first behavior is going to be hard. The second one's going to be less hard, but still hard. Third one, he's going to figure it out pretty quickly. By the 4th time, he knows you just won't accept tantrums. That's how it goes. Go on the IBT website and learn all this stuff. It's very important because his tantrums are for different reasons. Sometimes it's because he wants something. Sometimes it's because he's avoiding something. And in each circumstance, you want to make sure that you're allowing the tantrum to just extinguish on its own, but you want to replace it with a different type of behavior. That's why it's important for you to get trained by IBT.
Is it unreasonable to think that a 10-year-old with a level 1 could be eligible for
So first of all, a level 1 is wrong. So there's always got to be 2 numbers. Okay. And a lot of times diagnosticians make this, I don't know why, make this mistake. So level 1, it either has to be level 1-1 or 1-2 or 2-1 or whatever. There's 2 numbers. There's 2 severity codes. And people just say level 1. Level 1 would indicate high functioning, but I don't know if this is a 1-1 child, which basically means that the child has very limited deficits in social communication, and very few self-stimulatory behaviors. That would be a 1-1.
Okay.
If that's the type of child, then you're dealing with a very intelligent child who's minimally impacted by autism. And this stuff will be easier, as I said before, but also harder because our very high-functioning kids are very manipulative.
Right.
So it could go one way or another. But regardless, my tendency is to think kids who are very high-functioning will manipulate you. You're very permissive parents. You will be manipulated. The very worst thing that could happen, and I'll say this again, the very worst thing that could happen that will make things worse is if you start the process and he tantrums and you give in.
Yeah.
If you do that, you have now strengthened his belief that tantruming will get you to back off. He will not let it go because he will have learned that ultimately, if a 5-minute tantrum didn't work, an hour-long one will. And what you've now accomplished is you've taught him to tantrum for an hour each time. So if you're not ready to do this, don't do it at all. This is not easy. I just want to say that. I am a behavior analyst and a psychologist through and through, and when my child used to scream at night because she wanted various things and I was not willing to go give it to her when she was a baby, I'd sit outside her room and cry. And so let me just tell you, it's not an easy procedure. Be prepared. Other ways you could prepare yourself is not to do it alone. Like, obviously, if you can get access to a team of people who are behavior analysts or behavior technicians or BCATs, or just help, like people around you, your spouse, your maybe a sister or a brother or someone who's helpful to take charge of the session, because this could go on for 2 hours, and I don't want you as a parent sitting there listening to your child screaming and crying and being aggressive for 2 hours. You need to also remove yourself, by the way, if the child gets aggressive, remove yourself from the room. Just make sure your child doesn't elope.
Right.
And make sure they're safe in the room so that they can't harm themselves. Most of the time, the child's not going to, one child won't harm themselves. They're just going to try to bang on the door and get out and make sure you know how upset they are. And if you don't react to it in any way, that's going to die down sooner. But for moral support, it would be good to have someone who can help you and say, hey, okay, you go get a snack. I'll be here watching it on a camera. Video cameras are fantastic nowadays because you can always look and see what's going on in there.
But you got to make sure that the people on the team understand what the mission is and we're not
Absolutely.
giving in. Because
Absolutely.
if you have your mother-in-law there and
Yep.
she's like, this is terrible, you should give in,
Yep.
it's not going to help you. So, you know,
And it's just so simple. It's simple behavior analysis, you know, like he's communicating to you. And if you give in, you're saying, oh, I understood the communication, I'll give in. I'll do whatever you want.
Right.
What you have to do is act dumb. I don't understand your communication, so you can tantrum till tomorrow. I don't know what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
The only way I understand is if you speak to me.
Right.
And that's
In
it.
a
That's
calm
what you're trying to
and
teach.
a calm voice.
Calm, nice voice. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's another very good point. You never want to accept a child screaming at you and say, oh, okay, well, he at least communicated.
Right. Right. Oh, it's so difficult. All right, we're going to take one last break and then we're going to be back to answer more questions. Stick with us.
What is autism? What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to just
Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism.
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them. Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
Always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
It's a movement.
Unpredictable.
That's right.
Awesome. Love.
The field I want to work in.
Laughter. fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these 3 words. There is hope.
So we're going to do down dog next. So with down dog, there are several different ways that you can do it, and I want to show you first and then help you with yours so that we can work on what feels good for you, okay? All right, because there's no right way to do it. It's more about what your body likes, right? So for me, what I'm going to do is start off with my hands at the top of my mat, my headlights. My fingers are aiming towards the top of my mat, and then I'm going to tuck my toes, and then my head is also going to drop, and I'm going to look between my toes. Okay. And my body should be, or hopefully, like an A shape.
Or V.
Or V, yes.
Upside down V.
Yep. And so if your quads are tight or your hamstrings are tight, you might need to bend your knees a little bit.
Bend it to you.
Or if your shoulders are a little strained or a little tight, remember to push in through your feet. But also sometimes what feels really good is going down your forearms, like this. You can actually start out this way instead, it's a little easier. So your forearms rest on the floor. You still tuck your toes, and then you're still looking between your toes. But rather than being on your hands then, your weight's along your hands and your forearms. Okay? All right. So, now it's your turn. Okay. So, yep. You're going to do on your hands? Okay, yep. So your fingers are facing the front of the mat. Or are you doing forearms? Forearms? Okay, there we go. Wow, you're very bendy. Very nice. And your gaze is right here between your toes. Excellent. Very nice, Jem. Wow. Awesome. Feet are a nice distance apart. How does that feel?
Okay.
Awesome. You want to come down? Excellent. Good.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Grandpichet is here with us, and she's answering your questions. I wanted to hop to a question, and I do want to just reference the fact that during last week's show, we want to give a shout out, Cindy Burns from, she had been on the Dr. Phil show
with me, that's right.
And she just wrote in a couple of things and said how right on the money you were about talking about behaviors. And then she also said, I just thought it was a great quote. She said, we have to be our child's Annie Sullivan. Helen Keller's teacher to reduce the behaviors by giving Helen another way to communicate. And she was just in total agreement with what you were saying. And I just thought that was a fun thing that we'll bring that up. But I also...
Hi, Cindy.
What's that?
And hi, Cindy.
And hi, Cindy. So, and if those of you who haven't seen that Dr. Phil episode that Dr. Grandpichet was on, it's on YouTube and you can Google it, Dr. Grandpichet and Dr. Phil, and it'll come up. But somebody wrote in a question, can you use ABA to decrease tics, for example, coughing, blinking, clearing throat, etc.?
Yeah, you can use ABA to control decrease anything that is in any way under a certain person under the person's control. So ABA, the definition of ABA includes the sort of, you can change behavior, and behavior is defined as anything that you can control, and it's basically is like the movement of a muscle that is voluntary. So nothing involuntary. So when we talk about tics, there's two ways to think about this, because some people think that certain tics are involuntary, and others think that no, actually you have some control over them. It's just that when you're doing other things, you're not focused on the tic, and therefore you are not able to control it. So one of the behavioral treatments for tics is to actually have the individual sit very calmly and gain awareness of their own tics first. So blinking being one of them. First of all, of course, you want to make sure, because a lot of people do that because they have other eye issues. Their eyes are dry, they're wearing contacts, whatever it is. But if it's nothing like that, or clearing throat or coughing or whatever it is, and there's no allergy involved with coughing or that kind of thing. So if it's purely a tic, which some of our kids have, then you have to, and depending on the functioning level of the child too, if they have too many other things they're dealing with, this won't work. But for them to become aware of it, and once they're aware of it, then it's very simple, because then all you do is you teach this is biofeedback, by the way. Biofeedback is a behavioral intervention, and what you do is you essentially establish a baseline. So the individual themselves can just do a click for every time the tic is occurring, right? And then you will have a number of times the tic occurred per minute. And you really don't want to do it more than, like, you need to just do very minimal short periods of time. And then what you do is you just literally tell the individual, try to do it less than that in a minute. Or don't do any until this clicker goes off, which is 1 minute. And so you are now shaping the individual's behavior. And if you can do this 2 minutes, 5 minutes, you increase it, and then over time the individual gains control of the tics. Sometimes these things are too hard, they're too frequent, too common, there's too much other stuff. Sometimes there's neurological basis for it. All of those types of things have to obviously be controlled. People tend to tic more if they haven't had enough sleep. People tend to tic more if they're on various stimulants. So there's a lot of underlying, and I wouldn't want you to sit down and just try this unless you're certain that all the medical issues have been dealt with. And of course, there's also medical interventions for tics. So, the most successful is always when you do both.
Okay, and good to know. I mean, I hadn't really thought about what the difference is between a tic and a stim, because we talk about stims all the time.
Very different. So, stims are a very fascinating thing. STIM stands for self-stimulatory behavior, which I always think that's a pretty bad name.
Yeah, it's a misnomer.
It is a very bad misnomer. In the field of ABA, we refer to self-stimulatory behavior as stereotypical behavior, which is better because we call it stereotypy. In the diagnostic manual, it's basically called stereotypical repetitive mannerisms, that type of thing. And that basically it's a huge array, it's a broad array of things, and it can be anything like, let's say, grunting, which would be the closest to a tic, or just making this sound, ee, I'm sure many people have, or to things like turning the lights on and off, to things like visually looking at something from the corner of your eye, to doing this, to doing this. These are all classified under self-stimulatory stereotypical behavior, and they're all very, very different. So again, to me, it's something that we just have not learned to ask more questions about. In my mind, some of the stuff that's self-stimulatory, or we consider to be a stim, is pain-related. I think the child is doing it to reduce pain. Some of it is just anxiety-related, so the child is doing it in order to reduce anxiety. Some of it is just visual sensory input or auditory sensory input. A lot of our kids will do this type of stuff because they like the sound. The visual stuff, there's no question they're trying to see things differently. And we just simply don't know enough about even normal hearing and vision. Forget about how our kids perceive things in the world. You know, we've learned quite a bit from Temple Grandin's information, but not enough to know exactly why they're doing these things. And so that's kind of a little bit different. Tics are usually, at least as far as we know, tics can also be anxiety provoked, for sure. And the tendency for people is to think that tics are more originating in the nervous system rather than kind of like has more of a medical or biochemical cause than self-stimulatory behavior, which we believe is just becomes a habit because it's something that has been reinforced intrinsically. Like if you're doing this and it removes pain, you're going to keep doing this.
Yeah.
So that's the concept with self-stimulatory behavior. It's like reinforcement maintained outside. And with tics, it's more like maintained because of internal types of.
It's all
we don't know. We just don't know enough about these things. Yeah.
It's fascinating. We could talk about this endlessly, but your time is up, and I know we could keep you forever, but you have other things to do that are really super important. Thank you. We don't have you next week. We do have to say that, but we will have you the week after, and pretty much from then on. So I don't know, but
on and off. There's still a few more trips this time.
But we'll have an oldie but a goodie next week. We'll keep people posted.
Thank you.
But right now, we are going to go to the A Word, which is that wonderful documentary following a little boy, Jack Riley. When we come back, we will have Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy and I have two guests today. One, Jenny Palmietto, who's going to talk to us about love and autism. You're not going to want to miss that. And then we have a wonderful guest who's going to be with us to talk about the ride for autism. But first, here's the A Word.
Look, good talking. Sassy's the bird, yeah. Independently tacting and joint attention is a big deal. The reason is that tacting is socially reinforced and doesn't have a tangible reinforcer. Look, good talking. Unlike manding, where the reward is getting what you're asking for. This is why Jack Riley has been requesting items. He's immediately reinforced. Tacting, on the other hand, is making an observation in your environment and then sharing with others what you experience. So the reward in tacting is the attention and social interaction. Kids with autism many times aren't naturally socially motivated in the way typically developing children are. Here, Jack Riley is simultaneously tacting with joint attention. Jack Riley looks at the TV, points, and labels the characters. Then he looks at Jessica to check that she is sharing the experience with him, and then looks back at the TV. A key identifying sign of autism is a child's lack of joint attention. They don't initiate having a joint experience, for example, pointing, or responding to other social cues like following a parent's gaze. The way we encourage tacting behaviors is by first practicing it in a contrived manner, like teaching labels, asking,
Well, what is it? Okay, thank you.
We teach them labels so they have words to communicate with. The hope is to fade the prompts until the language happens naturally and often.
The end.
That's the next Lion King. Circle of life.
The end. All right. It's over. Yeah.
Okay. It's all over. It's over, buddy.
You want to play? Do you want to play? Say yes. Yes. Good. Do you want to play? Yes. Okay, here. Do you want one fire truck or two? Two. Two. Okay, here you go. Fire trucks. Fire trucks, yeah. Alright, Jack Riley, one more minute, okay? Say okay. Okay. Alright. Alright, buddy. Come over here. Come sit down. Ow.
Jessica and Jack Riley are continuing to work on identifying categories since he knows so many labels now.
Hey, mister. That was good sitting, but you gotta face me, okay? Turn around, turn around. Thanks. Do you want bubbles, phone, or fire truck? Whoa. Say I. Whoa. Okay. Toys. Hold on, buddy. I know. Hold on. Ready? Say I'm ready. I'm ready. Okay. Give me a vehicle. Vehicle. Good job. What is it? Vehicle. Nice. Good job, kiddo. Right. Hold on. Hold on. Ready? Say I'm ready. I'm ready. Okay. Give me animal. Good job. What is it? Animals. Good job. There you go. Here's another sticker for you. Give me toys. Toys. Nice job. What is it? Toys. Yeah, but what is it? Say toys. No, say toys. Toys. Good. What is it? Toys. There you go, mister. Nice job. Give me animal. Good job. What is it? Animals. Nice. All right. Last one. Give me. Hey, look at me. Look at me. Good job. Give me food. Talk. What? Cat. Nice job. What is it? Animals. No, this one. What's this one? Animals. No. What is this? Food. Food! There we go! Alright. Here you go. Buffalo. Yeah. There you go, mister. Do you want more Twinkle Twinkle Little Star? More? Ow. Do you want more? Boy. Say I. I want boy. Okay, we're gonna sing first. Head, shoulders, knees and toes. Knees and toes, head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Knees, toes. What's next? Eyes and ears and mouth and nose, head, shoulders. Knees, toes, knees and toes. Yeah! That was very good. High fives. Oh, too slow. High five. Ah, too slow. There you go. Ah, yay! You did it. Good boy. Okay, I'll get you your peekaboo wild, okay? Okay, where's my peekaboo wild? Let me go get it for you. There you go. So silly. He's gotten so much better. He knows the words now, which is really, really cool. And it helps him with labeling his body parts too. So a lot of the body parts I think he learned from the song before we even started on them.
Knowing the song also prepares Jack Riley for preschool. By knowing the words and movements, he will be able to participate in social activities that his peers will be doing.
right. Welcome back. I
Hi.
just said to Samantha, don't forget to play the opener because she made this beautiful
Yes,
opener.
she did.
And I said it a second too late. Bummer.
Okay. Here we
she's
are.
She'll play it in a minute because it's so good.
Okay. Here we are with Let's Talk Autism. I'm Nancy Jackson.
I'm Shannon Penrod. And I'm glad to be back. And
I
you
know.
did such a great job on your own last week.
Well, thank you.
And it was wonderful.
It's always fun to fill in for you.
Well, it was exciting for me, but also it was weird. It was like, I'm not there.
Yeah.
Jem and I were at a restaurant in San Antonio when you guys were on the air, and we had this iPad set up on the, people at the tables thought it was, we were, like, you know, culturally weird that we were like focused on, as they were making us tableside guacamole, which is an experience you should have in San Antonio. It was really
they make
good.
Tableside guacamole?
They pull up with the, you know, it's like the Caesar salad experience, right? But
That's
they make
fun.
the guacamole right there with these wooden paddles, and it was very good.
Good.
And fattening and calorie ridden, but it was very, very good.
Sounds delicious.
And it was hotter than Hey Nani Nani. Texas is hot.
Yeah.
Has anybody made that connection
And in the
before?
summer, it's very hot.
It's hot.
And humid.
And humid. But we had a good time,
Good.
but we're glad to be back.
Good to have you
glad
back.
to be back here with you. Did you, and you were on vacation before that, so I was
Right.
here by myself. Did you guys have a good time
Yes,
on
we had a
vacation?
great time.
Well, and I should stipulate, we were not on vacation. We were working and going to different offices, but we squeezed in fun wherever we could.
Okay,
And tableside guacamole was one of the fun.
Okay, great.
While watching you guys on the show. But in any case, we got a big show planned. We have Jenny Palmietto who's going to be with us in just a few minutes. She's from Love and Autism, the conference that happens every fall.
Yes, it's been going on, I think, for 4 years now.
And it's a great topic, and a topic that really nobody else was addressing.
Right.
And isn't it interesting to watch how squeamish people get when you start talking about love and sex, and people just get, you know?
Right.
So glad that Jenny is taking it on. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. Who better to do it than Jenny? And so she's going to share with us some exciting things that they've got going on at this year's conference. And then we also have a wonderful guest, Anna Seyfried. Did I say that right?
I think so.
Who's going to be with us?
Seyfried.
Who's going to be with us talking about
Their Ride for Autism, which
Yes.
the proceeds go to Act Today.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah.
There's a couple of organizations that benefit from it, aren't they? Or is it?
No, she has other organizations. She has other work they do out of her the American Legion Post there.
Fabulous.
In West Brownsville, California.
Well, excited to hear all
yeah.
about that, the wonderful Ride for Autism, because I know they've got some, and that's happening this Saturday.
Yes.
Which is amazing. So all that exciting, but first we've got some in the news.
Yes.
Do you want to start with news
there
study?
was a study that girls are much less likely to be diagnosed with autism because social camouflage may lead to underdiagnosis. It's easier for a girl to slip under the radar when she has autism.
And it's interesting because we keep talking about how the prevalence for boys is so much higher, and over the years there keep coming in these studies that are saying that that may not be entirely true because it takes girls longer to get diagnosed. So that and that they're finding out that a lot of women, it's underdiagnosed in women,
Right.
because there's this preconception starting out that makes it harder for girls to be diagnosed because they tend to be more socially capable. But inside, they're having stress trying to comply because they can understand what the social rule is, even if they can't do it, and that it makes them really stressed out. I also thought it was interesting that the study looked at how the compulsions are different in girls and boys. You and I were just talking about this a minute ago, that one of the quotes by one of the authors of the study said that girls' obsessions tend to be, and I'm quoting, more endearing and culturally acceptable than boys.
Like if girls collect seashells, it's not considered unusual, but boys collecting rocks and being obsessive about it.
And talking endlessly about them, it's not as endearing.
Right.
And that immediately made me start thinking about Martha Stewart.
Right.
Because, Martha Stewart has many things that she collects, and she has a room in one of her homes that is just depression glass,
Oh.
like on these shelves with little rods holding them up.
Right.
And I was thinking that's probably not endearing to everyone. But, you know, she made a whole career. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that Martha Stewart is on the spectrum. I'm just saying that it's an interesting way to look at it, that the things that we do, society gives us as women more latitude to collect. I collected ball jars, blue glass ball jars forever, and no one took me to task for it.
Right.
And whereas, you know, if a guy did that, everybody would have a lot of things to say. But I do think it's important for people who have girls that are really stressed and have a lot of compulsions, but you're not taking them to be diagnosed because you're saying, you know, but they make good eye contact and they're doing well in their grades in school, that don't overlook it.
Right.
And that seems to be what all the studies seem to be suggesting, is that that might be a girl who needs a little bit more help and
that it might not be screaming autism, but in fact it could be.
Right. And that there is help and support for that.
Yes.
To lead a life that is not as riddled with anxiety.
And then there was another story in the news about, I didn't see this when it happened, a young boy, a 4-year-old boy who was berated by a fan at a Yankees game and was called retarded.
Yeah.
And apparently he is scarred from the incident and can't stop thinking about it and talking about it.
It's one of those things, and you see people taking camps. So this happened at a Yankee game, and I think it was over the weekend, last weekend. And a lot of people are talking about it. I love this headline that Samantha's showing there, Man Most Foul. So, you know, and there's 2 sides to every story, and there's usually 5 sides to every story, but they were watching the game, and this is a little guy. He's 4 years old.
Just a tiny
and
boy.
He, the mom thinks that he must have kicked the chair of the guy in front. And let's be honest, he probably kicked it more than once. Because then this guy turned around and she caught it on her phone, and he just, a torrent of foulness to a 4-year-old boy, and he used the R word and said, "What are you?" You know, the R word.
And used the F word too.
And you know, it was over the top, his reaction. And the mom has said how disappointed she is in a lot of people's reaction, because when she saw her child escalating, that she asked some people, security at Yankee Stadium, and said, you know, is there some place we could go? And was given a non-answer, that they didn't really understand what she was asking, and said, no, there isn't something. And I think it's just a level of awareness, and that perhaps this event, because this guy did us the horrible favor of being so unbelievably, inexcusably over the top rude, it has called everything else into attention. And I do believe that the Yankees will pay more attention in the future, and perhaps set up a quiet room for all people, all of their guests, because a ball game can get a very sensory overwhelming.
It said in this article the stadium sets aside quiet places.
Well, the people didn't know about it.
Right.
So, you know, we see this a lot. You know, you can put a whole lot of time and effort into making something happen, but if you don't have the awareness and train your staff, how would they know? I was just saying on this trip that I love the experience now. I can go into almost any restaurant and say to them, do you have a gluten-free menu? And almost always I'm treated to the response of, a what? And I say, a gluten-free menu. Oh, I don't think we have that. And now I know to say, could you ask the manager if you have a gluten-free menu? And here comes the manager with a laminated gluten-free menu. But if people at the front don't know,
right,
and if I don't know to ask for it, then this great thing doesn't happen. And for this, I love getting into conversations with people who have neurotypical kids about this, because I'm of the mindset, kids need to go out into the world and see all kinds of things in a ball game. Come on, this is the great American pastime. Our kids need to be there. All kids should be so lucky to get the opportunity to be at a ball game at some point. But, I hear from my friends who have neurotypical kids, well, the guy had, he paid a lot of money for his seat, and who wants to be hit in the back through the whole thing, or even a couple of times.
It's one thing to...
But be a human being.
Yes, don't be abusive.
Be a human being.
Yeah.
And, turn around and say, your child is hitting my chair. is there a way that we can get that to stop?
Right.
Because then the mom can say, you know what, I'm doing the level best I can, and I really apologize. Let me take him for a walk. I'm not suggesting, and I know you're not, that we should just let our kids wail on the tar on the, the back of the seats and have everybody else be miserable. But grow a compassion bone. How about that?
Well, the Yankee Brass says they're working with the DeMarcos to get them back into the Bronx soon to a game. So.
Well, let's hope so, because this little boy doesn't want to go now.
No.
And can you blame him?
No.
After that.
So another story about Seahawks legend Kurt Warner, who's been sharing his family's struggles raising twin boys with autism.
You know what was the most interesting thing for me about this is that they start out by talking about the fact that he disappeared from the spotlight for 2 decades. And I don't know about you, but I relate to that greatly.
Oh, yeah.
That, your child, you're clipping along, and for him, he's at the top of his game, and he's got other kids, and he's married, and everything's working out, and then suddenly he disappears from the spotlight, and now he's coming forward so many years later and saying, well, this is where I was. I had 2 boys that were diagnosed with autism, and I had to take care of things at home. And I think for every family that's going through this, you lose a certain amount of ability to be in your life and vocal.
Right.
I have friends who are like, what happened to you?
Right.
And I'm like, what happened to me? I had a child diagnosed with autism.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you never called me.
Right.
And I'm not friends with them anymore.
And he talks very candidly about the struggle. He said that when they would turn 5, the doctors gave them a diagnosis. And he said, at least we had a name. Before that, it was just like bad parenting because they were out of control. And apparently, there was a lot of aggression with the twins. And they Austin and Christian are their names. They would kick holes in the walls, bite themselves bloody, bang their heads against the walls. And the Warners said that they hit rock bottom in February 2008. Anna, his wife, said when I opened his bedroom door, fire was everywhere. So they had quite a few struggles with, aggressive behaviors.
And they're both working now. And one of the things that I thought was particularly interesting, that they have jobs and they have on-site job coaches, which is something that we've been talking more and more about, that, what do we have to do to set up our population to be able to work? We love when we have Joanne Lara from Autism Works now on the show, and she has changed my mind a little bit about this, because I was of the impression that not everybody in our community is going to have a job.
Right.
And Joanne's like, no, that's unacceptable thinking. Like, no, we have to be thinking about what can we do to make sure that everybody does have a job, that a job is a right, a human right. And that it doesn't have to be the highest paying job, but that it needs to be something that the person feels like they are making a contribution and that they are getting back a paycheck from it, that everybody has a right to that. And that sometimes what that takes is an on-site job coach, and I'm excited to see that they have been able to put that in place for these 2 young men.
Yeah.
Really
and it says
exciting.
that the Warners are now living, not drowning in the challenges brought by autism, and opening up. It's still chaotic, but balanced with lots of love.
And they've got a book that they have written called Waiting for a Miracle. They're looking for a publisher, and so we're going to reach out to them, see if we can't have them on the show and help them. Many other times people on the show have been able to find a publisher after talking about their book deal. So let's see if we can't make that happen for the Warners.
Yeah. Have them come on.
All right. We are going to take a little bit of a break, and then I don't know how we're doing time-wise, but we have 2 fabulous guests for you. Jenny Palmietto, we're going to talk about love and autism. Coming up. Stick with us.
Nobody ever asks a kid with autism, what is it you'd really like to do? At this school, we ask the kids, what is your goal? What is your dream? Exceptional Minds is a vocational training program for young adults on the autism spectrum who want to have careers in computer animation and visual effects. I think young people with autism are totally underestimated.
When you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. They all have different talents, different skills, and what surprised me is that there really are no limits, that if these guys believe that they can do something, they really can.
It's estimated that 90 to 95% of young adults with autism are unemployed or underemployed.
A lot of young adults still live at home. A lot of them suffer from depression and are very isolated from the rest of the world, and the opportunities for them are very limited.
We want to develop careers for our young adults. Our full-time program runs 3 years, at the end of which we have job placement and job coaching. We have a work readiness program. We also have our own in-house studio so that when our students graduate, they can do on-the-job training and work on real projects.
We outsourced about 30-40 shots to the team here. They did fantastic work that we can put into a movie and be proud of it. It's great. I mean, we want to do it again.
The studio is their first step into the professional world, the first step in their new careers as digital artists.
The whole purpose is to get the students out into the real world.
We all have the same dreams. We want significance, dignity, and purpose with our lives. We have an opportunity to give those 3 words to every single student at this school who will actually be able to go out and participate in the dream.
This is my first full-time, full-paying job. I primarily work in After Effects. I learned After Effects at Exceptional Minds. It seemed like a good place for me to fit in because I was interested in animation.
Right from the first day that Nicky set foot in our company, he was producing work for us. We saw what level of professionalism is being instilled in them from the very beginning.
This was the first opportunity where Nicky could combine something he loved to do with something he was really, really good at that could eventually lead to employment.
When we first met Kevin, he was working at a supermarket bagging groceries, and they said he would never amount to anything else.
I work at Stargate Studios, and I'm a junior compositor. I mainly do like rotoscoping right now, and I'm still learning.
I think that you find great talent in the most amazing places. The students at Exceptional Minds have had a fair amount of training to get them ready for the visual effects environment.
If it wasn't for Exceptional Minds, I might still be at the supermarket, and I might be living at my parents' house.
Everything's changed. Nicky has purpose.
It feels like I'm a member of society now.
He's capable of making it on his own.
Once you get inside, you see what's really happening there, you immediately want to be a part of it.
It's the dream factory, you know, the movie business, and if you can connect people with their dreams, then the magic happens.
At Exceptional Minds, we like to say that we are changing lives one frame at a time.
So there was the open.
Yes, the beautiful opening that Samantha made that that we never seem to play. But she just played it and it's fabulous, and so I love it.
So while we're waiting for our guest, Jenny Paniato,
who, by the way, is not late. She was scheduled to come earlier.
Right.
It's just that we were hurrying a little bit, and so we got done early.
Let's talk about some of your adventures on the road and where you've been over the last week and a half or 2 weeks.
You know, it started earlier in June that we took a trip up to Northern California and visited 9 of the card offices that are in Northern California, in and around Fresno and San Jose and a little bit in Lower Sacramento. And that was fascinating. And it really opened my eyes because each office is so individual, and yet there are running themes there because they're card offices, and it's a little bit like coming home to an apartment that looks completely different, but you recognize all the tchotchkes.
Right.
It's a little bizarre. And the people were just amazing. So we came back so inspired from that. And then We left here like 2.5 weeks ago. We went first to New Mexico and visited the folks in Santa Fe, and we had an opportunity to meet along the way some people who've been on the show before that I'm going to have more information about it, to talk about autism in the classroom. And then we went from there to Dallas and saw the new people in the Coleyville office in Dallas. We went to Austin, where there are 3 offices in Austin. Then we went down to Corpus Christi. And what a beautiful place Corpus Christi is.
I haven't been there, but I've seen photos and it's supposed to be gorgeous. It's on the water, right?
It is, but it's on the bay. And I had a little bit of a spiritual experience that I wanted to share with you, that if we have time, we can do it on the air, because, whatever. But I knew that you would appreciate this. But from Corpus Christi, we went back up to San Antonio, had an amazing time in San Antonio, met with, both in Corpus Christi and San Antonio, we met with parents everywhere, but especially in Corpus Christi and San Antonio, boy, they really lit a fire in me. And then we...
and what was the reason for that?
That they lit a fire under
Yeah.
me? To see I think it's important for all parents that are at any point to connect with other parents at other points in the intervention, because for me, at a point where I am, to meet with parents that are just starting, and I have some fear and trepidation in my heart because I know what they're facing.
Right.
And I know
The road
how
ahead.
extraordinary this journey is for them and how it's not going to be easy. But to show them, this is why you would want to do this. And to see their bravery. And it reminded me of us when we started, Nancy, because we didn't know what we were facing, but we had a lot of energy in the beginning. It is inspirational to see these parents who are like, I'm going to do whatever. It just took my breath away. It just really took my breath away. But I will tell you, and then Jenny is here, but I will tell you that when I stood on the beach there in Corpus Christi, Jem went to play in the water, and I'm not so much a play in the water person. And he, we didn't have our swimsuits or anything, and it literally, he was picking up seashells and doing things like that. But I was watching the seagulls. And in Corpus Christi, the wind is intense. And apparently it's all the time intense. It just, there's intense and then really intense. And I don't know what it was on the day that we were there, but I love seagulls. And I love to watch seagulls, and I love the book Jonathan Livingston's Seagull, but the seagulls were hanging in the wind in a group and flapping, and they looked like they were on like a coat hanger,
Right,
like
like a mobile almost,
yes,
yeah.
and they were flapping in the wind, and I was like, I don't know that I've seen that before. And then one of them would break off and try to head out over the water. Well, the wind is coming off the water, so they're heading directly into it, and they're struggling because they're little birds, they're not strong birds, and so they would try to get out, and some of them would get a little bit out over the water, but the wind would propel them back, and if they went a little to one side or the other, the wind just threw them back into the group. But they would struggle again and again and again, and sometimes I lose track of who I am and where I am, and I just don't know. But I was standing there on the beach, and it took me forever to realize I was talking to the seagulls. I just didn't know I was doing it out loud and very loudly. And I was standing there on the beach saying, you can do it. You can do it. Don't go to the left. Don't go to the left. No, keep trying. Because every once in a while, a bird would get out there.
Right.
And I found myself crying.
Right.
And because I just related.
It was a metaphor.
Totally. And I thought, this is what it's like for all of us, that, we're in a group, and it's like, you can do it, you can do it. And somebody makes a break for it to get as far as they can, and they get pushed back.
Right.
But they gotta, it was in their nature to keep trying, and they exhausted themselves. And I don't know how often in Corpus Christi a bird gets out over the sea, but you knew that it was in their nature, that they were like, but we're going to keep trying. And I, was screaming and yelling and going, I believe in you. I know you can do it. And then I realized people were looking at me and thinking that I needed to be carried off to the nut farm.
Okay. But I get it. I get the metaphor, and I get how
it was emotional for me. It was really emotional for me. And just, to have that moment in amongst of a lot of travel, to just stop and see that. And I really, it was meeting those parents. It was the same thing.
Right.
It really took but it reminded me how important it is that that we all acknowledge the struggle.
Yes, the struggle is monumental.
But you can't give up.
No.
You can't give up. So anyway, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back with
Jenny Palmietto, Love and Autism.
Yes. We're very excited because we're in the Noah's Ark exhibit and we're here with Jason Porter. Thank you for taking us on this tour.
Oh, thanks for having us.
So you're going to show me around a little bit and show me some of the secrets of the Noah's Ark exhibit, right?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Cool, let's go. Yeah. So Jason, tell us, this is an amazing space. Why is it so incredible for children?
One of the values of the Skirball Cultural Center is taking care of the earth and one another, and so this idea of repurposing materials that would otherwise be tossed off was a big component to how we design the galleries. It's based on, certainly the story that everyone knows is the one from the Hebrew Bible, the story of Noah. But in our research, we looked at over 200 flood stories from around the world, and many different cultures have flood stories that have similarities, and the similarities that we identified were these 3 chapters. The storm, some crazy challenge that comes to your life, an ark, a kind of means of survival, a way for a community to come together to survive, and finally the rainbow, which is this kind of symbol of hope, the second chance to make the world anew.
Love it. All right, let's take a look through, and we're going to talk about some of the learning opportunities that are available here.
We really wanted people to kind of discover what they were supposed to do. For example, this elephant has a gong in the center, and there's a little wheel here that you can turn and see what happens. But there's also some hidden things, like there's a little peephole in this polar bear, so it's kind of a moment where you could talk with your kids about what does it mean that that polar bear in there only has a small piece of ice to live on it, and you could talk about kind of the environmental issues that might be associated with it.
All right, should we go downstairs?
Yeah, let's check out the storm.
So Jason, what do you call this room?
This is called the Storm Gallery. In one side of the gallery, we have a storm wall, which is all sorts of sounds and sight effects to make the storm come to life. But we have this, what we call the load up. It's fairly intuitive. You put animals onto the conveyor belt and you turn the wheel and they get loaded up onto the ark. Except you can't do both at the same time by yourself. It's kind of layered in the doing, the learning that we're really interested in, which is about this notion of working together in order to accomplish something. So, when you first get on the ark, obviously you enter 2 by 2 as the story goes. And so the animals in this first section of the ark, they're not quite sure where they should be. They're a little bit nervous about who to hang out with. The gallery is really organized so that the animals are still in pairs. So we talk a lot about what are the elements of home that you need to survive. And it's really a nice kind of intro into the whole experience of being in a community, learning to be together with people who may or may not be the same as us. This gallery of Noah's Ark is unique, I think, in terms of the way that it was designed, that it offers a huge variety of experiences in a way that really accommodates people of all stripes and spots. So there are more quiet zones, like we just left in the move-in day, where you can come into this room where you have a lot of large motor things that are happening, including climbing, and we kind of have nicknamed this the arcade. It's kind of the chapter in the story where they're making new families and they're mixing with other animals that they've befriended. Oh, we have to talk about poop.
We can't do a show without talking about poop.
So, the other fact of life on an ark is that everybody poops. So the challenge is to, clean up.
Okay, so we're in the last room, very cool room. What do we call this room?
We call this the Rainbow Gallery. People really get that this is a place of hope. Sometimes there's an art-making project, that it ends in some sort of inspiration, that people feel like they're inspired to take action in the world and make it a better place.
Thank you so much for showing us everything and telling us about all the wonderful things at the Skirball Center. Welcome
We're back.
I'm so
we're
busy
joined by, as promised, Jenny Palmiato.
Yes.
That's
from Love and Autism, which you're now going into your 4th year. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're excited. This is the first time that we've had you in the studio. We've had you on via Skype.
Yes, and it's nice to kind of be able to do this a little bit more personally.
Right. Yeah, it's very fun to have you here. I feel like I've known you for a long time, but this is the first time in the room with you.
Right. So it's a conference that takes place each year. This year it's September 30th through October 1st. And tell us what the conference is for those that don't know Love and Autism.
Sure. So Love and Autism is become this experience or event more than even a conference, where we bring in world experts mostly autistic voices. I think we're probably unique in that, where the main stage is really reserved for autistic voices or family members and autistic voices to share raw, honest, real stuff about what it means to live and love on the autism spectrum. So I never know exactly what anybody's going to say. I just gather great people to come together and talk about what it means to be autistic.
Which, you know, we didn't really say, but you are a licensed marriage and family therapist. So I was saying before, who better to be able to do this? You are also somebody who does EFT and RDI. Yeah. And for people who don't know what those are, can you briefly describe?
Yeah. So RDI is relationship development intervention, and that is a model of therapy where it's based on the guiding participation relationship, which means that there are experts in this world and people apprentice under experts. And this starts from very early on, 6 months. We're reaching out to those that we already deem as experts. Something about the guiding relationship gets disrupted when there's neurological differences associated with autism, and RDI is there to empower that relationship. It's a very humanistic and respectful model, and that's why I really enjoy practicing.
Fabulous. So who better to be able to do this kind of a conference? What made you say, okay, I want to, because this is a topic that everybody should be talking about, but we were saying before, people get squeamish when you start to talk about love and potentially sex, and then you throw the word autism in there, it seems like everybody gets a little, oh, I'm afraid.
Well, and I think that the reason I started it was really for the parents that I treat. And it was this core group of people, and I thought, I'm tired of the conference offerings I'm getting, and I understand that you're tired of the stuff that you're receiving as well in the larger community, and I think I can do it better. So, you know, we kind of started brainstorming together and came up with this idea that relationships are under-discussed. There's tons of myths related to people on the spectrum not wanting, desiring, or being successful at relationships. And I'm going to say our first year was good. Now we're great. And I think that it's through a ton of dialogue and discussion with these many people in the community, autistic self-advocates, that have empowered me to know how to do it even better. And it's kind of like this tag you're it. Each speaker from last year tells me about another person, and then I kind of go look and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. So I think, you know, part of this is about tearing down the myths related to what it might mean to be autistic. Part of it is about letting autistic voices be center stage. And, you know, for me, just to put it really simplistically, I learn about being a woman from other women. I wouldn't necessarily go to a women's conference with an all-male audience. Right. And I think that so often we see these larger learning events have one or two people on the spectrum adding to the conversation. And over time, we've realized that this is so powerful and everybody's narrative matters. And particularly if we're wanting to do something better for those living and loving on the spectrum, then hearing their voices is the way to do it.
Yeah. So tell us about some of the things you have going on this year.
So I would say the thing that every year I get kind of really excited about like one thing and seeing it play out. I'm really excited about Daniel Wendler and Kyler Shuwei's new project. So I approached them and said, let's do a teen track. We've had more and more teens across the years join our conference, but what I noticed about the teens is they're sitting in the audience and they're in, and then they're on their phones. And I thought, God, I could do it better for these guys. And what they are here for is this sense that they belong and this and finding their tribe. And so we decided to create this thing called You Belong, which is a 2-day small group adolescent track with the core idea of finding your tribe and figuring out what happens in your life that interrupts you from having the relationships that you desire. So when I called Daniel, because Daniel was a speaker last year, and I said, here's my idea, he just took it and ran with it, and he called me back and said, can I do it with my best friend And I thought there's nothing more perfect than two best friends coming together to show the power of a relationship, show the power of a platonic relationship, and help these young men and women navigate that in their own lives. So I'm really excited about that, and I think that will be just fabulous.
It sounds fabulous. We've had Daniel before on the show, but not had his best friend on the show. But Daniel is an amazing speaker and just so inspirational, I think, to everyone.
I think his heart just enters the room.
Yeah.
Like in every conversation he's in. I tell him, well, not all the time, but I've mentioned a few times, I'm like, when you get your degree, if you ever need a job, I'd love to be that person that offers you that. He's just phenomenal.
Really wonderful. What else do you have going on this year?
So we were talking a little bit about this before we got on today, but Asperger's RS is doing a unique comedy sketch for us. I just died when I saw their documentary. I thought it was so clever what they're doing together. There's so many different layers, this friendship, this idea of are we good enough related to our diagnosis, and what gets in the way of our own selves and our own success and our own dreams. And I just felt like they were perfect for this event. And so when I contacted this group, and Noah said, hey, we'd like to develop a unique comedy sketch for you guys, and then we'll do a panel, I thought it just sounded perfect.
So I assume it's going to be on relationships.
You know, I don't know. I kind of, what I like to tell people is, you know, figure out who we are and our values, and then if you think you can match and grow it, be here. And,
well, the one thing we know for sure, it'll be hilarious. I also love the documentary. The only thing about it now, having seen them perform live, is that they are so much funnier than you could ever guess they were from the documentary. They're hilarious. So that'll be really fun for people. You've also got John Elder Robeson.
Yes.
That's a very big get.
His wife, Mary Pat.
And his son, Jack. So that was something new that we decided to do this year, was have full families together, having this dynamic conversation. And John was kind of helped me shape that idea. I had invited him, and I'd known I wanted to do a little bit more groups and that sort of thing. And he said, I had invited John and his son, and he's like, how about Mary Pat come? And yes, let's do this. Let's have a whole family discussing neurodiversity. And yeah, I mean, all of his books are fabulous. I'm rereading Look Me in the Eye, and that's just tremendously written. It has value for people that are newly discovering that they might be a neurodivergent thinker, as well as parents at any point in the journey. Professionals, I think it's just like, and you know, they're just mass grouping of people, readers, but I love that book. Yeah, so I'm super excited to see them.
You have a human rights activist, Amy Sequenzia.
Yes, so Amy is a non-speaking, powerful activist in both disability rights and autistic rights, and she's also a poet. Her voice is just so strong, and she's really helps at least me question what aspects of myself or even my practice still hold on to ableist beliefs, and how to explore that and how to revise that in some ways. And I think that this is one of the things that I know about particularly our event, is that I want it to be comfortable for everybody. It's not just for autistic people. It's for parents, for professionals, for people that are checking many boxes. And I think that Amy is going to allow people into her own experiences. And first, for those that have emergent communicators or children that are having trouble in verbal communication, this is this example of a woman that has grown herself into this leader in our community and in the disability rights community. And what a powerful example. I think role modeling and mentorship is so important in any sort of journey that we're on. And I think she's going to serve to be an emotional and wonderful example for so many.
Well, one of the things I love is that you have 4 different tracks. And people always have tracks at conferences, but you're doing this in an entirely different way that I think is so smart. That there is a do track for people who want to, be actually doing something. I know there are times when I go to a conference and I'm sitting there and it's just like, oh, it's talk. And I'll get to a level of anxiety if I don't have a chance to do it. So I love this. You've got a track that's about learning, people who want to do that, people who want to connect, which I'm sure is a lot of people coming to this conference, that they want to connect with other people, and the track about belonging, that's the teen track.
Absolutely. So we decided, we ran through this idea that maybe each speaker isn't for everybody. And, last year we had, for the first time, a quiet and a movement room that were just beautifully organized. And I noticed people would go in there, and part of it was when I felt like they didn't connect with the main stage speaker. And so when we started kind of thinking about what type of tracks, the first thing is do what other people have done. The early diagnosis track, the late diagnosis track, or whatever it is. And we just thought, that's not it. The tracks are for people that want a smaller experience and to customize their experience. And so we thought about like all the different ways people learn and like deepen their emotional experience. What we find is that, people think that they're coming to get all these practical tips, and what they end up leaving with is just a whole lot more motivation to live the lives of their dreams and to go after whatever it is that they set themselves up to do, whether it be additional relationships or growing their own passion in their lives. So we kind of are looking at love as a broader context or concept, just loving yourself, loving your life, and
it's a
being neurodiverse.
Wonderful mission.
And once again, it's September 30th to October 1st. How can people find out about it and register?
Yes, so www.loveandautism.com is our website. We do have some, we are regional center funded. We have a stipend available. If you go on our website, you can find the vendor code that will allow people to come for less money. Most California regional centers have some sort of stipend, so that's a way to get there if for those that are consumers or their parents are consumers. And there's also the ASA offers something called the Stauffer Foundation Grant, and this is for the San Diego County, which is kind of a large county. They can go for free if they apply for this grant. It is an amazing resource for our local community. And we have discounts, and honestly, we want those that want to be here and need to be here to be here, and anybody can find our email address on the website, and if they have some sort of specific situation that they need some support to get there, we help people along that way.
Okay, great.
An amazing conference. So again, the dates on that, September 30th to October 1st, go to loveandautism.com. And the "and" is spelled out, not the "and." A&D.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in and for doing this.
Finally having you here in person.
Awesome.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to be back with Anna Seifrid talking about the Ride for Autism. Stick with us.
Awesome.
It's always fun, because whenever someone asks, I run away in fear. We're Asperger's or us. It's true, we're the first comedy troupe composed of people on the autism spectrum.
So if we're not funny, blame it on Ethan's disability. You should come to what might be our last ever show.
We'll be able to do material that we've worked on but haven't performed yet, and also it'll be really, really silly. We want to sell out Earth.
This is definitely the most challenging show we've had.
We want aliens to come to the show and be turned away because it's full. There's parts that are screwed up, there's parts the audience doesn't get, but we're realistic, so if the aliens get in, that's okay too.
It's going to be a disaster. It's going to be...
Start thinking this way.
I was born this way.
I've been more stressed than I have been in the past.
We're hypersensitive because something's irritating us from the inside.
I'm saying that I feel upset.
All of this stuff that's hard, that's difficult for us, this is what we get for starting Asperger's R Us.
I asked. I'm not talking about you. I want you guys to leave. I just want it to be done now.
It's a lonely, lonely world. This is my diagnosis, the actual time I got diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and I skipped home because I felt freer than I ever had. It explained everything that had ever happened to me that didn't make sense.
When you have Asperger's, you can do things that are really, really great, not in spite of having autism, but through it.
Doing really good, dude. I'm really happy that we're in this troop together. And the rabbi interrupts him and says, sorry to cut you off.
These guys are my best friends. I don't really have anything bad to say.
This gazebo has the stupidest sign, because what the hell else are you gonna do in a gazebo? I'm a rebel without a cause, baby.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're at the ABCs and XYZs of Special Needs Conference. And this year, for the first time, they've got something really remarkable. It's the Entrepreneurial Boutique. These are all items that have been made and are being sold by individuals who have special needs. So we're going to do a little shopping and talk to some of these fabulous entrepreneurs. Come on.
My name is Molly Rarick, and I'm founder of Breed's Gift. We're a nonprofit that serves teens and adults with special needs, like Chase here. We were founded in 2013 and serve people in the Conejo Valley, Santa Barbara, and LA.
Our main objective is to give our participants the skills they need to gain a more independent life.
My name is Shelley Cox, and Lisa Zalagi and I are founders of Creative Steps and Create Micro Business Enterprises. And the items that we're selling here today are all made by the clients who have passions about what they want to make, and then they get the profits from what they make after we've paid all of the other expenses.
We are here today because my goal is to be independent, and also I would like to share all my artwork, and I would like to sell.
Thinking about at his young age being a businessman, it's amazing. I cannot be more proud.
And we're back with Let's Talk Autism, and right now we have a special guest joining us by Skype, Anna Seafried. Hi, Anna, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. You're from the California West Brownsville area.
Yes.
And you are married to a veteran. You have a 9-year-old son who is on the spectrum. And you're a physical therapist, and you volunteer as an auxiliary member at the West Brownsville American Legion Post 940. And you came up with an amazing idea that has raised so much money for Act Today. Can you talk about the Ride for Autism?
Yeah. When my son was diagnosed, about 5 years ago, I decided that I wanted to do something to raise money for autism awareness. So I came up with the idea of holding a motorcycle run based out of our local Legion chapter, Legion Riders. So I took the idea to their meeting and proposed it to them, and we decided that it was a wonderful thing. There wasn't one person in that room that wasn't affected by autism or knows somebody affected by autism. So we started to organize the ride that year, and in 4 years' time, we've grown it into a pretty large event, not only just for the ride itself, but it's become into a big community event that we host every year.
Yeah, and let's talk about the money you raised this year. Can you give us the total? It's just astounding.
Our event was July 8th, this past month, and we raised $18,390 with all proceeds going directly to Act Today for military families.
Which is just so fantastic. And there we see a check with your group. Just amazing. And tell us, did this just kind of develop on its own, or how did you develop the idea over these last 4 years to grow it?
Well, it started just as the ride itself the first year, and we created the ride, and we had a Chinese auction that day, and just tried to open it up to the community. we decided to have a band play out on our deck that first year to try to get more people to come, not just bikers, you know. So the first year that we had it, not a whole lot of people participated that we had expected to, with it being our first run. We only had about 35 bikes that participated that year, but lots of people had said if the benefit itself had incorporated, you know, autism and some other military aspect, then they would have participated. So that's when we went to the internet to find military-based autism charities and came across Act Today for Military Families. And I think once we did that and promoted it as a military/autism benefit, it really just kind of took off from there. You know, we had more bikers every year participating. From that first year, 35 bikes showing up, to this year we had 137 bikes show up and register.
And we're seeing a picture right now of all the motorcycles lined up.
Anna,
Yeah.
I gotta ask, and tell us, how do you say your last name? I don't want to mess it up.
It's Seyfried.
Seyfried, okay. And it's just amazing to me. Here you are, one person, and you have this idea, and you've made such a difference. And that makes such a difference in so many people's lives. Is there anything about this? I'd love to think that it helps you in some way as well. Have you gotten anything out of this?
Just the gratitude of being able to do it, honestly. You know, and I can't take credit for the event itself being as successful as it has. We have a wonderful group of Legion members that just will help in any way they can to help with the success of the ride. And our Legion Riders chapter is a wonderful group of individuals that really just help promote it and build it back up into what it is. If it wasn't for all of the volunteers that we get from the Legion and my family and the riders, it wouldn't be as successful as it is.
Well, you're a great example of how somebody can start something on a small scale. Yes. We always are encouraging people to help Act Today, do something grassroots, and we call that Act Across America. And you took this on and you built it, and we are so indebted to you, and we wanted to just say thank you, thank you, thank you for what you've done.
Absolutely.
Well, you're very welcome. We're already planning next year's event, so hopefully it's bigger than this year's.
Well, it's just amazing.
We appreciate you, and we're proud of the way you walk your walk.
That's right.
It's amazing. And tell
Thank
everybody
you.
there, thank you for all the families, on behalf of all the families that's going to help.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Anna.
Our pleasure. All right, take care.
Yep.
What an amazing young woman.
I know.
What an amazing family, and what an amazing event to raise money for an amazing charity. It's all amazing.
Just all came about.
And that's the power of one.
Right.
You know, I think sometimes somebody out there right now probably has an idea for something, but you're a little afraid.
Right. Don't be afraid. Go for it.
Go for it.
And make a difference.
Amazing things can happen. We're out of time, but I will say that tomorrow on the show we have the amazing, I love that word today.
Amazing.
Everything is amazing today. We have Bonnie Yates, a special education attorney, and then we're going to have Christina Adams, who's just come back from a trip to Cuba.
Oh.
She went to Cuba, and we asked her while she was there to look and see what the state of autism is in Cuba, because we've heard a lot of reports that Cuba is the one place that has not had soaring rates, and you wonder.
And what was her trip to Cuba about?
Well, I think that, Christina goes a lot of different places talking about camel milk, and but she's also a world traveler, and wherever she goes, she's looking at autism and doing investigative journalism sometimes. So she's going to tell us what she was doing and what she found out about autism in Cuba, and she's got some amazing information.
It's again
for us.
amazing.
Amazing. I'm stuck there on that. So that and ever so much more is happening tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And yourselves a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye for now.